In this video, we'll calculate Ohm's law and also work with the power formula. Now, Ohm's law and the power formula actually are all combined into this formula wheel here. And what this tells me is, okay, if I know any two things about a circuit, I can find out a third thing about the circuit. So, for instance, if I wanted to figure out something about the current in the circuit, and I know the power and the voltage. So let's say I know the power and the voltage. So to figure out the current here, I would take the power and divide it by the voltage. If I wanted to figure out the resistance in a circuit, resistance in a DC circuit, impedance in an AC circuit, I can come over here and look for resistance. And let's say I know the voltage and the current, and I want to figure out the resistance. Here, if I want to figure out the resistance, I take the voltage and divide it by the current, and that will give me the resistance. So if you know any two things about a circuit, you can easily find out the third. Now, I have three examples here of formulas that we'll work through. In the first one, we'll find out the resistance, and the two things I know here are the voltage and the power. And the next one, what I want to know is the current, and what we know here will be the power and the voltage. And the third one here, we want to figure out what the power is, and we know both the voltage and current. Let's work through this first one. I want to know what the resistance is, and V squared over P, so I want to know what the resistance is, and I know the voltage and the power, and it says here voltage squared divided by power. So voltage squared, let's say we have 70 volts squared divided by power, let's say it's 120 watts. And I get out my scientific calculator, and I do 70 squared, and that gives me 4,900 divided by 120 watts. And this tells me that the resistance in the circuit, 40.83 ohms. So that's working with, we know the voltage and the power. We square the voltage up top, divided by the power, we find that we have 40.83 ohms worth of resistance. Let's see if we can figure out the current here, and we'll use the same numbers that we had just a moment ago. I want to figure out what the current is with this 120 watts that we had before, and also the 70 volts that we had before. I want to figure out the current. It says I can take the power and divide it by the volts. So my current here, our power was 120 watts divided by the 70 volts that we had in the circuit. So 120 divided by 70. It says the current in this circuit, 1.71 amperes of current in that circuit. So that's simply taking the power and dividing by the voltage. And we've discovered we have a little less than 2 amps worth of current in that circuit. The third example here, I want to know what the power is for a given voltage, and I also know the current, so I want to know the power. I go over here to the formula wheel, and I can find out voltage times current will give me the resultant power. So power here, let's say I have 28 volts, and we're going to say 3.5 amperes worth of current. So 28 volts times 3.5 amperes worth of current, so 28 times 3.5. In this circuit, we have 98 watts worth of power consumed in the circuit. So this is just using Ohm's law and the formula wheel. Any two things you know about the circuit, you can find out the third.